day, everyone. So our topic for today is about the pre-colonial cultural traits of the Philippines, topic 6. So the Philippine archipelago for years, of course, were visited by various kinds of tribes from different parts of Asia, right? And yes, for years, various cultural traits were formed and enacted symbolizing the identity of a certain tribe. It made the tribe more united and well understood as people raise awareness towards the certain beliefs they believe in. Until then, these cultural traits were handed down from generations to generations and were acknowledged until this time. So our objectives are to define what is cultural traits, identify the pre-colonial cultural traits in the Philippines, the importance of cultural traits, and the impact of cultural traits to a certain tribe. So what is cultural traits anyway? Any trait of human activity acquired in social life. So the major element of culture are symbols, language, norms, values, and artifacts. So examples are the values, the costumes, marriage and family, government and law, games and leisure, economy and trade, language and religion during the pre-colonial period. So these are the examples of cultural traits that we will tackle at this topic. So what is the pre-colonial cultural traits of the early Filipinos? So since the early Filipinos were composed of different tribes, they grouped themselves into different communities of 50 to 2,000 individuals. They have also constructed their shelters according to their lifestyle and living. So they were situated near the bodies of water, and some living in forests for fertile land, and some living in caves. So let's talk about politics. Composed of what are the types of government during this period? The lawmaking process and the judicial process. So type of government, as the unit of government, a barangay composed of 30 to 100 families. It was headed by a dato. And of course, the barangay is independent from the other group. So several barangays settled near each other to help one another in case for war and emergency. And the position of dato was passed by the holder of the position to the eldest son, if none, to the eldest daughter. However, later, any member of the barangay could be chieftain based on his talent and ability to become the new leader. So, the old days, a dato had a council of elders to advise him, especially whenever he wanted a law to be enacted. The law was written and announced the whole barangay by a town carrier called umaluhukan. So, the lawmaking process, the chief consults with the council of elders who approve of his plan. They are not immediately enforced until the new legislation is announced to the village by the umaluhukan, who also explains the law to everyone. So, what are the judicial process? So, disputes between individuals were settled by a court made up of the village chief and the council of elders. Between barangays, a board made up of elders, which came from neutral barangay, serves as the parliament. So the accused and the accuser face each other in front of the court with their respective witnesses. Both took an oath or panunumpa to tell the truth, and most of the time, the one who presents the most witnesses wins the case. So next thing is, let's talk about the society, the dress code, social class, livelihood, and marriage system. So the dress codes for men, historians have found that the barong Tagalog have already existed. The men wore a sleeve doublet made of kanga or rough cotton that reached slightly below the waist. For women, the women also wore sleeve dress, but shorter than the men. They also wear a pain attached to the waist and reaching to the feet, accented by a colorful belt. The Visayan men wore a jacket with a Moorish-style robe that reached down their feet and was embroidered with beautiful colors. Tagalog and Visayan men bound their temples and forehead with a putong, and narrow stripes of cloth. They also wore gold, jewelry, and other accessories to beautify their bodies. So, number 2 is the social class. Prior to the arrival of the colonizers of Spain, the Filipinos are a people who already had an archipelago, a semi-communal status, and social semi-slaves. So certain areas, particularly in Sulu and Mindanao, when it comes to feudal faith, because Islam had already taken over the world roots. When it comes to Aitas, the most important thing was that they had the most basic social form, a company that was founded and communal in nature. The social structure comprised of, first is the ruling class, second is the intermediate class or the middle class, and third is the class of slaves. So it has 3 social structures. There were 2 kinds of slaves. Those who had their own quarters or houses, called aliping na mamahay, and those who live in their master's house, aliping sa gigilid. So, why noong panahon there were slaves? Because they failure to pay their debts and tribute and commission of crimes and captivity in wars between barangays. Third is livelihood. Those who lived by water are surviving in fishing, finding shells and pearls. They use boat and crafts as for transportation, especially in carrying their goods for trade from one place to another. Meanwhile, those who live in land cultivate and plant crops, vegetables, and fruits for a living. After harvest, they move from one place to another with fertile soil and plant again. So agriculture is the main source of livelihood at that time. And there are 2 ways of cultivating: the kaingin system and tillage. Agricultural productivity was enhanced by use of irrigation. So there were no abono at that time, but they used irrigation ditches like those found in Ifugao rice terraces. In weaving, home industry that was dominated by women using crude wooden looms, textiles such as sinamay from hemp, midrinake from banana cotton linen, and silk were woven. And the 4th livelihood is trade, was conducted between or among barangays or even from other countries like China and more. And it is said that Chinese traders noted that Filipinos were very honest in their commercial transactions at that time. So 4th is the marriage system. Men were in general monogamous, while their wives are called asawa, while concubines are called friends. So of course, in ancient times, in order to win the hand of his lady, the man has to show his patience and dedication to both the lady and her parents. So doon nangyayari ang paninilbihan or courtship. And of course, at that time, giving a dowry or bigay kaya is prominent. Pay panghihimuyat, pay the wet nurse or bigay sukso, and pay the parents. Himaraw, bribe for the relatives, called sambon. Afterwards, he brings his parents to meet the fiancé's parents, called pamamalae. The wedding was headed by the priestess called babaylan, and uncooked rice will be thrown to the newlywed after the wedding. So let's talk about the cultural beliefs, where spiritual beliefs and burial process. At this period, indigenous spiritual traditions practiced by people were present in the Philippines. Their practice was a collection of beliefs and cultural mores anchored in the idea that the world is inhabited by spirits and supernatural entities. So these spirits were called anito or diwata. Moreover, they serve worships to other specific deities, like the picture below. They also worship animals. So magic chants and prayers are often key features. For them, diseases were thought to be the result of the environmental spirits' temper. So nakadepende daw sa temper ng spirits bakit may mga diseases. Priests such as babaylan or bailana or katalona acted as mediums to communicate with these spirits. So, ang babaylan ang nagko-communicate po sa mga spirits na ito. So, in the Visayas region, they commonly believe in witchcraft and mythical creatures like aswang, nuno sa punso, and more. Burial process. The dead was placed in a wooden coffin and buried in a house complete with cloth, gold, and other valuable things. So, dinadala pala nila ang kanilang mga gamit sa kamatayan. Fires were started upon the death of a person built beneath the home, with armed guys guarded the body as sentinels. So, relatives of the dead wore rattan bands in arms, legs, and neck and usually stopped or refrained from eating meat and drinking wine. Some ancients limited their nutrition with vegetables called sipa, and the relative of the murdered person will never stop mourning without vengeance called balata. A celebration will be held of the 9th day of the death called pasiyam, where a play is staged to honor the dead called tibaw. So let's talk about literature and art, composed of writing system, language, oral and written literature, music and dance styles, and instruments and artifacts. So the writing system, the early period, almost everyone in the society, male or female, knows how to read and write. So the system of writing came from the alphabet of Sumatra, the first Visayan, Tagalog, Ilocano, and some ethnic groups have their own dialect and form of writing too. They have an alphabet called syllabary composed of 17 letters, 3 of which are vowels and 14 are consonants. The Muslims have also their own system basing on their dialect. It's called Kirim of Maranao and Jiwi of the Tausug. For language, there are more than 100 languages in the Philippines, 8 of which are considered major languages. From these areas below, the differences might be accounted for the need to forming new words and phrases to fit the new environment, and many words or terms in Filipino languages were derived from Malayan. For oral and written literature, Tagalogs have several literature: the riddle or bugtong, street songs, maxim, saying, song of revelry, war song, and more. They have also lullabies and bridal songs, mournful songs, household songs, and couplet chanted by the blind. And also, dramas develop into different forms such as pagbati, karagatan, tagayan, pananapatan, sabalaw, tibaw. The karagatan was a debate in verse, which is problem is resolved. In Maranao literature inspired by Islam consisted of folktale, short love poems, sayings, and proverbs, and more. Filipinos were fond of composing epic poetry, which is why the country is unique for having more than 20 epic examples, such as the Hudhud and Alim, Biag ni Lamang, Bantugan, and more. In music and dance styles, songs, dance, and drama probably developed simultaneously. Most of the pre-colonial drama was held in sambahan or places of worship. Ilocano literature, for its part, has many kinds of songs sung on different occasions. These include dalot or song during baptismal party, wedding, or feast, and bading, love song sung in serenade, and dungag or dirge. So examples of native songs which depict different events include potato dance, torture dance, dual dance, and lovers dance, makasla dance, kinutan or ants dance, balitaw and dandansuy in Visayan, balatong, dalit, hiliraw in Tagalog. Instruments and artifacts. Some examples of pre-colonial musical instruments include kudyapi, bansik, gangsa, abafi, gongs, juice, harp. This composed of aerophones, gongs. These are the examples of instruments at that time. And last are the artifacts. Primitive tools are a good example of this, accompanied with firearms that had been sandblasted flowers, petals, and leaf lines. Beads, amulets, and other forms of jewelry also contain these substances. Jewelry made of leather, such as bracelets, stones such as jade, crimson, carnelian, and others. So their bark cloth was colored and embellished with colors and designs that are appealing. So weapons were manufactured with designs on their handles. Pottery with incised designs were made, and carvings made of wood, bone, ivory, or horn were also done, not only for the use of living but also of the dead. So the zigzag design on ancient lime tubes and the ornamental carvings and combs reflect Negrito influence. So Malay influence can be traced to the wood carvings found in utensils, boats, and wooden shells of the Solo people, Mindanao, and Mountain Province. So at that time, hindi po nawala ang paggawa ng artifacts. So people at that time were very creative in making ancient artifacts, siguro to be sold or to be bartered from other countries. So those people from ancient times are unique individuals, are talented in making crafts. That's why Filipinos were well known at that time, especially in making transactions with other countries. So that's the end of our topic. Hope you learned something. God bless. Thank you.